And let's finish the 34th chapter of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. The king and the Yankee had to escape a mob because they kind of gave themselves away by how they were talking to people. They were treed, they came down from the tree and tried to fight the mob, and now a gentleman has shown up to confront the mob about why they are attacking the boss and the king. Peace! Ye know not what you say. They are not mad. Who are ye? And whence are ye? Explain. We are but peaceful strangers, sir, I said, and travelling upon our own concerns. We are from a far country, and unacquainted here. We have purposed no harm, and yet, but for your brave interference and protection, these people would have killed us. As you have divined, sir, we are not mad, neither are we violent or bloodthirsty. The gentleman turned to his retinue and said calmly, Flash me these animals to their kennels. The mob vanished in an instant, and after them plunged the horsemen, laying about them with their whips and piteously riding down such as were witless enough to keep the road instead of taking to the bush. The shrieks and supplications presently died away in the distance, and soon the horsemen began to straggle back. Meantime the gentleman had been questioning us more closely, and had dug no particulars out of us. We were lavish of recognition of the service he was doing so, but we revealed nothing more than that we were friendless strangers from a far country. When the escort were all returned, the gentleman said to one of his servants, Bring the led horses and mount these people. Yes, my lord. We were placed toward the rear among the servants. We travelled pretty fast, and finally drew rein some time after dark at a roadside inn, some 10 or 12 miles from the scene of our troubles. My lord went immediately to his room after ordering his supper, and we saw no more of him. At dawn in the morning we breakfasted and made ready to start. My lord's chief attendant sauntered forward at that moment with indolent grace and said, Ye have said ye should continue upon the road, which is our direction likewise. Wherefore, my lord, the Earl Grip hath given commandment that ye retain the horses and ride, and that certain of us ride with ye at a 20-mile to a fair town, the high Cambano, where so ye shall be out of peril. We would do nothing less than express our thanks and accept the offer. We jogged along, 6 in the party, at a moderate and comfortable gait, and in conversation learned that my Lord Grip was a very great personage in his own region, which lay a day's journey beyond Cambane. We loitered to such a degree that it was near the middle of the forenoon when we entered the market square of the town. We dismounted and left our thanks once more for my lord, and then approached a crowd assembled in the center of the square to see what might be the object of interest. It was the remnant of that old peregrinating band of slaves, so they had been dragging their chains about. All this weary time that poor husband was gone, and also many others, and some few purchases had been added to the gang. The king was not interested, and wanted to move along, but I was absorbed and full of pity. I could not take my eyes away from these worn and wasted wrecks of humanity. There they sat, grouped upon the ground, silent, uncomplaining, with bowed heads, a pathetic sight. And, by hideous contrast, a redundant orator was making a speech to another gathering not 30 steps away, in fulsome laudation of our glorious British liberties. I was boiling. I had forgotten I was a plebeian. I was remembering I was a man, cost what it might. I would mount that rostrum and click. The king and I were handcuffed together. Our companions, those servants, had done it. My Lord Grip stood looking on. The king burst out in fury and said, What meaneth this ill-mannered jest? My lord merely said to his head miscreant coolly, Put up the slaves and sell them. Slaves! The word had a new sound, and how unspeakably awful. The king lifted his manacles and brought them down with a deadly force, but my lord was out of the way when they arrived. A dozen of the rascal servants sprang forward, and in a moment we were helpless with our hands bound behind us. We so loudly and so earnestly proclaimed ourselves free men that we got the interested attention of that liberty-mouthing orator and his patriotic crowd, and they gathered about us and assumed a very determined attitude. The orator said, "If indeed ye are free men, ye have not to fear. The God-given liberties of Britain are about ye for your shield and shelter." Applause. "Ye shall soon see. Bring forth your proofs." "What proofs?" "Proof that ye are freemen." Ah, I remembered. I came to myself. I said nothing, but the king stormed out, "Thou art insane, man. It were better, and more in reason, that this thief and scoundrel here prove that we are not freemen." You see, he knew his own laws just as other people so often know the laws, by words, not by effects. They take a meaning and get to be very vivid when you come to apply them to yourself. All hands shook their heads and looked disappointed. Some turned away, no longer interested. The orator said, and this time in tones of business, not of sentiment, "And ye do not know your country's laws? It were time ye learned them. Ye are strangers to us. Ye will not deny that. Ye may be freemen. We do not deny that. But also ye may be slaves. The law is clear. It doth not require the claimant to prove ye are slaves. It requires you to prove ye are not." I said, "Dear sir, dear sir, give us only time to send to Asalot, or give us only time to send to the Valley of Holiness. Please, good man, these are extraordinary requests, and you may not hope to have them granted. It would cost much time, and would unwarrantably inconvenience your master." "Master, idiot!" stormed the king. "I have no master. I am myself the master." "Silence, for God's sake!" I got the words out in time to stop the king. We were in trouble enough already. It could not help us any to give these people the notion that we were lunatics. There is no use in stringing out the details. The earl put us up and sold us at auction. This same infernal law had existed in our own South in my time, more than 1,300 years later, and under it hundreds of free men who could not prove they were free men had been sold into lifelong slavery, without the circumstance of making any particular impression upon me. But the minute law and the action block came into my personal experience. A thing which had been merely improper before became suddenly hellish. Well, that's the way we are made. Yes, we were sold at auction like swine, in a big town and an active market. We should have brought a good price, but this price was utterly stagnant, and so we sold at a figure which made me ashamed. Every time I think of it, the King of England brought $7 and his Prime Minister $9, whereas the King was easily worth $12, and I as easily worth $15. But that is the way things always go if you force a sale on a dull market. I don't care what the property is. You are going to make a poor business of it, and you can make up your mind to it. If the Earl had had wit enough. However, there was no occasion for my working my sympathies on his account. Let him go for the present. I took his number, so to speak. The slave dealer bought us both and hitched us onto that long chain of his, and we constituted the rear of his procession. We took up our line of march and passed out of Cambrai at noon, and it seemed to me unaccountably strange and odd that the King of England and his chief minister, marching manacled and fettered and yoked in a slave convoy, could move by all manner of idle men and women, and under windows where sat the sweet and the lovely, and yet never attract a curious eye, never provoke a single remark. Dear, dear, it only shows there is nothing diviner about a king than there is about a tramp after all. He is just a cheap and hollow artificiality when you don't know he is a king. But reveal his quality, and dear me, it takes your very breath away to look at him. I reckon we are all fools, born so, no doubt. And that's the end of chapter 34.